The annual Thompson family reunion was in full swing, complete with its favorite pastime, dissecting my life choices. This year's setting was my cousin Rachel's freshly renovated mansion, where success seemed to drip from every gilded surface. "Still doing that freelance thing, Anna?" Rachel asked, her perfectly manicured fingers fluttering dismissively as she lounged on a designer sofa. "I figured you'd have come to your senses by now and gotten a real job." I took a slow sip of wine, letting her words slide right off me. After a decade of enduring their sneers, I had developed an almost athletic endurance for their condescension. "Actually, I'm still consulting," I replied evenly. "Just wrapped up a project last month." "Oh, sweetie," Aunt Patricia chimed in, her voice dripping with faux sympathy. "You know Robert could always find you something at Thompson Corp., maybe in HR or admin." Robert, my uncle and the self-important CEO of Thompson Corp., gave a benevolent nod from his oversized leather chair. "Family looks after its own. Still, it's a shame to see a Thompson with so little drive." Rachel and her brother Michael, both comfortably perched on the family payroll since college, shared a smug glance. They had been handed the corporate ladder and climbed it with zero resistance. "Speaking of Thompson Corp., Michael added, swirling his scotch like a prop in a play, "we're finalizing the Miller acquisition tomorrow. Biggest deal we've ever done." He paused to smirk at me. "But I guess that's beyond your scope, Anna." If only they knew. My phone buzzed quietly, a message from my real office. "Final contract revisions complete, ready for signing tomorrow." I typed back a quick perfect, then slipped back into my assigned role as the family's resident cautionary tale. They'd never asked what kind of consulting I did, or for whom. Without a flashy corporate title, they simply assumed I was floundering. "Do consultants even make enough to live in the city?" Rachel's husband, James, asked, feigning curiosity. "I get by," I answered softly, thinking of my penthouse and its sweeping skyline view, the same view I'd have tomorrow, sitting across the negotiating table from them. "Well, not everyone can succeed," Aunt Patricia declared theatrically. "Some people exist to show the younger generation what not to do." The younger generation, she meant, Rachel's teenage daughters, were busy sneaking champagne behind her back. When I caught their eye and winked, they stared at me, wide-eyed. The family's designated failure had just broken character. "Did you hear about the consulting firm helping with the Miller deal?" one of Rachel's business school friends asked. "Phoenix Consulting Group, brutally effective. No one knows who runs it." I almost laughed. If they only knew. "Probably some old boys club," Michael scoffed. "I heard the CEO is a woman, probably handed the role because of diversity quotas." Rachel nodded gravely. "That's why Thompson Corp will always come out on top. We have real pedigree, real experience." My phone buzzed again. "Miss Thompson, final confirmation needed for tomorrow's strategy." I excused myself to the bathroom and typed back, "Proceed as planned. Include my full name on the final contract, Anna Elizabeth Thompson, CEO, Phoenix Consulting Group." Tomorrow would be fun. "Still hiding away, Anna?" Rachel's voice floated through the bathroom door. "Some things never change." I opened the door and met her smirk with a calm, steady smile. "No, Rachel, some things don't change, but sometimes, they're not quite what they seem." She frowned, confused. She wasn't used to any response other than quiet submission from her unsuccessful cousin. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Oh, nothing," I said lightly, "just thinking about tomorrow. Big day for Thompson Corp., right?" "Not that you'd understand," she sniffed, "but yes. After we close with Miller Industries, we'll be the biggest in the sector." I nodded, thinking about the contract waiting on my desk, the one with terms Thompson Corp. Had no idea were coming. "Good luck with that," I said. Rachel paused, as if she sensed something in my voice, but before she could question it, her husband called her over. She turned away, already dismissing me from her mind. I glanced at my watch. In less than 24 hours. The family that had dismissed me for a decade would finally learn exactly what kind of consulting I did, and who they'd been belittling all these years. Sometimes, the sweetest revenge isn't a confrontation but a quiet unveiling at the perfect moment, and tomorrow would be that moment. The next morning, the Thompson Corp. Boardroom buzzed with restless excitement. Executives in tailored suits clustered around the long oak table, their expressions hungry and self-satisfied. The Miller acquisition would make them all richer and cement their power, or so they believed. I sat unnoticed at the far end, the family failure hidden in plain sight. Rachel and Michael were at the head of the table, boasting loudly about the deal and the promotions they were certain would follow. "Once this is closed, I'll be running the merged divisions," Michael declared, puffing up like a peacock. "Dad's already promised." The double doors swung open, cutting him off. My assistant, Claire, entered in a sharp, tailored suit that immediately commanded attention. "Representatives from Phoenix Consulting Group have arrived," she announced, tossing me a knowing glance. Uncle Robert rose, smoothing his tie with a self-important air. "Excellent, though I expected your CEO to attend personally for something this significant." Claire smiled faintly. "Oh, she's here. In fact, she's been here all along." I stood, slowly and deliberately, and stepped to the head of the table. The room went still. Rachel's jaw dropped. Michael's face turned crimson. "Good morning," I said evenly, letting the words hang. "Shall we get started?" The room fell into stunned silence. Rachel's mouth opened and shut soundlessly. Michael looked like he might faint. What is this?" Aunt Patricia finally gasped. "This," I said, opening my briefcase with precise calm, "is business." I looked to Claire. "Please distribute the final contracts." "Anna," Uncle Robert's voice cracked, "you work for Phoenix?" I met his gaze, steady and composed. "Actually, I founded Phoenix, built it from nothing to the top of the industry, but you were all too busy mocking me to ever ask what I really did." Rachel snatched the contract in front of her, her fingers trembling as she flipped the pages. "This can't be. You're nobody, just a failed freelancer." "Page 3, Rachel," I said gently, "the CEO's signature line." Her eyes flew across the page, and the color drained from her face. She looked up at me, utterly speechless. Michael shot to his feet, his chair crashing behind him. "Dad, this is insane. She can't be. She's just Anna." "Just Anna," I echoed softly, "who spent a decade quietly building an empire while you were busy playing corporate royalty. The same Anna who now owns this negotiation, and rewrote your contract last night." Uncle Robert grabbed a contract, scanning it frantically. His complexion turned ashen. "These terms, they're nothing like what we agreed on." "Correct," I said calmly. "You discussed your fantasy terms with Miller's board, but Miller brought in Phoenix 6 months ago to handle the real deal. Everything you thought you agreed to was merely a preliminary draft. This is the final agreement." Michael's voice cracked into a shrill panic. "We'll lose control. These terms give Miller the majority stake." "Actually," I corrected, my voice measured and unhurried, "the terms give Phoenix majority control, via a sophisticated network of shell companies, all owned and managed by me." The boardroom exploded into chaos. Executives flipped through contracts in a frenzy. Lawyers huddled in corners whispering in urgent, panicked tones. My family stared at me as though I'd just materialized from thin air. In a way, I had. "This is impossible," Aunt Patricia shrieked. "Robert, do something." Uncle Robert slumped back in his chair, the color draining from his face as his lawyers confirmed the inevitable. It's all legal," one finally admitted in a hushed voice. "She's outmaneuvered us completely." I rose slowly, my voice cutting through the noise. 10 years of reunions where you laughed at me, 10 years of hearing how success could only be measured by a corner office and the Thompson name. Meanwhile, I built something far beyond your imagination. Rachel, who had been frozen in shock, finally found her voice. "But, why didn't you tell us?" I smiled, remembering the countless dinners where they seated me at the kids' table and offered patronizing, career advice. "Because the best strategy is always to let your opponents underestimate you. You all were so eager to dismiss me, I simply let you." The contracts on the table sat like ticking bombs. My signature, Anna Elizabeth Thompson, stared back at them, the same hand that signed all those ignored Christmas cards. I checked my watch. "We have about an hour before the press conference. I suggest you start coming to terms with your new corporate reality." "New reality?" Michael gasped, his voice cracking. "Yes," I said calmly. "As of today, Thompson Corp is a wholly owned subsidiary of Phoenix Group, and all of you," I swept my gaze around the table, pausing on each stunned face, "will now report to that nobody consultant you mocked for the past decade." The silence that followed was exquisite. The next hour dissolved into frantic calls, hushed legal strategy sessions, and the slow, dawning horror of a reality they could no longer escape. I sat at the head of the table, my table, watching them come undone. "The press is waiting in the main conference room," Claire announced as she returned. "Also, Miller's board just called. They congratulate you on finally stepping into the spotlight." Rachel's head snapped up. Miller knew, all this time? Of course, I said. Most of our major clients know exactly who I am. The only ones who never bothered to ask were sitting right here. Uncle Robert, looking like a ghost, cleared his throat. Anna, surely we can discuss this as family. Family? I echoed, tilting my head. You mean like when you've discussed my career choices at every dinner, or when you told the club I was broke and pitiful? We were trying to help, Aunt Patricia pleaded weakly. I built a billion-dollar company from the ground up, I said evenly, while you all squabbled over offices and titles. I built something real, something that didn't need your approval or your pity. Michael, still furiously texting, looked up in desperation. There must be a way to stop this, some loophole, some challenge. You can try, I said lightly, but considering Phoenix has led some of the largest and most complex acquisitions of the last 5 years, I'd say our legal team is rather airtight. Would you like their contact info? They're the same lawyers you once claimed I couldn't afford. The doors opened once more. My executive team entered, moving with quiet authority. They greeted me with nods of respect, ignoring the stunned family members entirely. It's time for the press conference, Claire said. Anna, would you like to look over your speech? I smiled. No need. I've been writing this one in my head for 10 years. Rachel stood suddenly, her once flawless outfit somehow shabbier now. Wait, what happens to us? I paused at the doorway. That depends. Those willing to actually earn their place are welcome to stay. Those who can't, I shrugged. There's always freelance consulting. The walk to the press room felt like stepping into a new world. My relatives trailed behind me, their faces blank with shock. As we approached the doors, I turned to them one last time. All those years you asked me what I did for a living. I told you, I was a consultant. I just never mentioned I consult on taking over companies like yours. The doors swung open, flashbulbs burst, reporters shouted my name as I stepped to the podium. Behind me, my family lingered in the shadows, finally relegated to the background where they'd once tried to keep me. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, my voice echoing with calm power. I'm Anna Elizabeth Thompson, CEO of Phoenix Consulting Group. Today marks not only a merger of 2 companies, but a reminder, success doesn't always look the way you think it should. Through the lights and the crowd, I spotted Rachel in the back. Tears streamed down her face, mascara smudging as she finally saw me, truly saw me, for the first time.